Hello, and in today's video I'm going to discuss the filters used within the fish house and some of the equipment I use within it. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos where I show you some of the fish I have and the fish house in general, please check my previous videos out. Please like and subscribe. To begin with, we'll go over the pipes I use to drain the water from the top tanks down into the sumps. It's a 3-inch drain pipe that runs from the top tanks at the surface level down into the bottom sump. There's a cage on the inside to stop any fish or large debris going down into the bottom sump. And at the bottom where the pipe enters the sump, I use aquatic plant pots you get with garden ponds to hold my filter wall. I change that on a regular basis as it gets dirty, and I find it really convenient. Later in the video I'm going to go over how I go about swapping this and basically generally how I do it, just to give you an idea of how I go about doing it. I have tried lots of different kinds of methods for mechanical filtration, from filter socks, nylon and felt. I've used the thick filter walls, the thin filter walls, sponges. I found the problems with some of the nylon filter socks is that they tend to clog up quite easily. I can clean them within a few hours. They already could be overflowing again. Not so much with dirt clogging them up, but just like a fine mucus layer that seems to develop on the inside of the nylon one. Sometimes it doesn't do it, but other times you can clean them, and literally hours later they're dirty again and overflowing. And it isn't so much dirt, it's the fact that there's some kind of slime layer forms on them that clogs up the nylon holes a lot quicker than, say, the felt ones do. The nylon ones do have the pros though. They're a lot easier to clean and you can use them for a lot longer before you have to replace them with a new one. The felt ones have their pros and cons as well. They do seem to polish the water better and produce a better quality, but again they're a lot harder to clean and you probably won't get as many uses out of them before you end up having to buy a new one. Some people can wash them in the washing machines or under the tap, but you just can't get that really fine dirt out after so many times of cleaning it, so you're kind of restricted to how many times you can use it. The alternative to that is use cheap filter wool. You use it for a week or a couple of days depending on how much you buy a load on the tank, and then you bin it. Again, this comes in different thicknesses. It comes from 2-3 inch thick all the way down to, I think the one I use is 5 to 8 millimeters thick. When I discuss a bit more of how I use mine within the aquatic plant pots, I'll explain a bit more why I get away with using such a thin filter wool. I have used the thick filter wool in the past on other aquariums, but it does run slightly expensive continuing to use it, because the thick stuff is obviously a lot more expensive than the thin stuff. Again, I'll go over that a bit more when we actually start looking at the filter wool. This is the image within the sump at the minute. The actual light I use on the sump I've actually took off at the minute as I'm replacing it, so I'm having to use a torch at the minute to light it up in here for you, but that's basically the 3-inch down pipe that comes in from the top tank that falls then into these aquatic plant pots that hold the filter wool in position. The K1 isn't moving at the minute because I've got the air pumps turned off so you can hear me, but that's basically how it runs. This is the roll of filter wool I use. As you can see, it's only ever very thin. I think it's about 5 to 8 millimeters when I order it. It's 50 meters on a roll, and it costs less than, I think it's about 50 to 60p a meter in total. And so far I've had this since, I think, January, and I've hardly used any of it so far, so it's lasting a real long time, which is good. In this section I'm actually changing one of the filter walls. This one hasn't been in particularly long, so it's not all that dirty, but I thought I'd change it anyway so I could record it and show you how I go about changing it. It's literally just 2 hooks that hold it in place, which I have to unhook. As you can see, I use one bucket to hold the filter wool in position inside the other bucket. So using 2 of these plant pots I can then hold the filter wool in position. I simply cut a new piece and slide the other one within the first one, and by doing that it holds the filter wool in position for me. That way I can use the thin filter wool, yet it covers still a large area. The stone's merely there just to help stop it bouncing. When the pumps first kick in and there's no water in it, the weight of it can cause it to bounce and come off the hooks, so that extra little bit of weight just holds it steady just as the pumps first start. I cut the offcuts off and just pushed them towards the bottom, because where the impact of the water first hits the bottom it can damage the filter wool at the bottom and put a hole through it. So I put a double layer of filter wool in the bottom just to support it. It then takes just a few seconds to put it back in and hook it up. The sumps themselves are 4.5 feet by 3.5 feet by roughly 2 feet deep when fully filled. There's currently 100 litres of K1 in there that's agitated using the air pumps. There's 100 litres in the left hand system and 100 litres in the right hand system. The systems can hold a lot more than 100 litres. They can probably go up to 300 or 400 litres quite easily. But for my current bio load, because of the relatively light stocking of the tanks at the minute, 100 litres is suffice at the minute, and it is doing the job okay. Also, for the air pumps I've got at the minute, to move it as much as it need to move, 100 litres is kind of the limit. If I do increase it any further in the future, that's when I'll upgrade my air pumps to get a bit more flow through the K1. I'm now going to describe to you the method I use to deliver air to the K1. I use pipework in a square at the bottom of the sump, weighted down, with holes in it every 6 inch to release the air in an even distribution around the K1. To make sure the air from the air pump is delivered evenly around the conduit, I've got 4 points where the air enters the conduit in each corner. So each length of the square gets roughly an even delivery of air. I currently have a 70 litre air pump that delivers air to the left hand tank, and then another 70 litre air pump that delivers air to the right hand tank. A small amount of that air goes to the main tank through an air stone, and a small amount also goes to the other sump in a small air stone. But the majority of the air is delivered straight to the K1 to keep the K1 agitated. Between the two bottom sumps underneath each tank, I've drilled a 3-inch hole, as the pump's in one tank and the water returns to the other. So there has to be a hole between the two of them to let the water through. Now, a problem a lot of people seem to have is keeping the K1 where they want it to be and not entering other sections of the sumps or even returning to the main tank. The way I do that is a basic simple device I built using the 3-inch pipework that I'll show you now in a quick clip. It works really well, and I don't really get any K1 entering the rest of the tank, so I'm quite happy with how it works. Whether I'll have any more difficulties with it when I increase the volume of the K1, I don't know, but as of yet, it's working perfectly fine. This is the device I used to stop the K1 entering the grow out tank. I basically took two 2-inch pieces of 3-inch pipe at either end and wrapped round the green netting around them, and then tightened it up and secured them in place. I then put an end cap on it to stop any coming down the end of the pipe. The other end of the pipe then fit beautifully inside the 3-inch bulkhead, allowing it to securely stay there and stop the K1 moving. After the water's passed through the 3-inch bulkhead from the K1 sump into the grow out tank, I have the 12,000 litre an hour return pump, which pumps it through the heat exchangers and back into the top tank. A few of you have asked me in the comment sections and in comments on some of the forums, when I've mentioned things in the past about how I'd like to do things differently. The pumps and the drains is one thing I'd probably do differently. 12,000 litres is pretty much the max I can put through this system, as that's basically the max the 3-inch pipework can take. Any more than that and it starts to back up and it will overflow the system, or drain the sump, whichever happens first. I probably would in the future, if I was to do this again, either put 2 3-inch drains in or possibly 1 4-inch drain, just to be able to increase the capacity and the overall flow rate of the aquarium if required. Here we have the solver weld pipe coming from the return pump, which sits inside the grow out tank here. This then enters the heat exchanger for this tank. This is a 130,000 BTU heat exchange, which if you follow the copper pipe returns back to the boiler in the corner. The one directly above it is exactly the same system but for the left hand side. At the top of them you've got the thermometer, which keeps track of the temperature and flicks the boiler on and off with a thermostat depending whether or not the water temperature in here is high or low. Then, exiting the heat exchanger, comes back out the pipework and returns back into the tank at the top here. The pipe slightly higher up is what I use to do water changes. That comes down about halfway down the tank, as you can see, to here inside. This section's pressurised and full of water constantly, so as soon as I turn one of them yellow taps down there, it siphons the water back out the tank and can lower the tank down to this level within a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, meaning I can do a water change pretty quickly. And then basically close the yellow valve and open up one of the taps, which allows me to then fill the tanks back up through the same pipework. This is the control systems I use for heating the aquariums. It's quite a common system used, I believe, on large koi ponds, probably more regularly than aquariums, but I find it works really well. I can control the accuracy and temperature of the tanks down to 0.1 Celsius with a standard deviation of half a degree. The reading's slightly off at the minute because there's no water actually passing through the thermometers as the pumps are turned off. Finally, I thought I'd just show what I use to treat the water as it comes in from the tap. This is basically a large carbon filter which removes the chlorine for me, followed by a 5 micron filter. This then goes through a mixer valve, which then mixes the cold water coming in from outside with warm water from the boiler. It mixes it at a rate required to enter the tanks at about somewhere between 25 and 30 degrees, which is perfect for the temperature for the tanks, and I can control it by slightly adjusting the valves. It means I don't have to do water changes with freezing water. Especially over winter, I've noticed the water temperature is so cold when it comes straight out under the ground that I don't think I'd be able to easily do large water changes on aquariums this size without being able to preheat the water. I've had this, I think, about 18 months now. I've been told these units can last for 5 to 10 years without having to have them changed because of how much carbon's in them, obviously depending how much you use them. I don't use this for the pond outside. I use a different dechlor unit method for that. But it is something I may look into eventually for using something similar for the pond outside. I thought I'd finish with a few quick pictures of the fish I have at the minute. This tank again is having the water change done on it. Again, you've probably noticed in a lot of my videos when you see my rays, the marbles are normally hidden under the sand. They only really come out when they're hungry, but this guy's always out and about. Thank you for watching again, and if I missed anything, hopefully if you can put it in the comments or leave any remarks in the forums, I'll try and cover it in the next video. Thank you for watching.